Recovery means to me is freedom and peace.
There is hope.
Recovery is awesome.
Recovery works.
Recovery is possible. There is hope.
Recovery is possible. There is hope.
Recovery to me means freedom. Recovery is possible.
Recovery works. Recovery is always possible. It's fantastic.
Progress, not perfection.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works.
Recovery is a journey, not a destination.
Hello, and welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Hajny, and today I have my good friend, Todd Tecca. Welcome to another podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for having me. These are always good.
They are always good. Like I think you're like one of our best guests on podcasts. I mean, you've done a lot of them over the years.
Well, I enjoy doing them. Hopefully they help folks.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, this is May, Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we're really focused on mental health. And I couldn't think of a better person to bring on to talk about this. And I mean, right? I mean,
yeah,
we've known each other a long time, and right? And so, there's been ups and downs in our lives, and right. And so I thought, man, I'd love to have Todd just share some of your experiences. And I know we have a couple of topics in particular. I don't really care which one we get into first. Do you have a preference of which?
No, not really.
Okay.
Either one works for me. So whichever one you want to kick off.
All right.
with.
So in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, let's start with the topic of, we're both people with mental health diagnosis. So let's start with the topic of how do we keep ourselves well and out of crisis, out of the depths of it. And I'm going to defer to you, like, tell us the secrets of how to.
Yeah, I wish it was that easy,
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's a daily, I look at it as something that my bipolar disorder is I try not to say I have bipolar disorder because that's something I deal with. It is, but that's not who I am, right? So
right.
I try and keep that first and foremost in my head, that that diagnosis doesn't make me who I am. What I do to prevent that and to help manage it, those are the things that really make me who I am. So for me, it's a daily, there are daily things that I do, try and get enough rest, and try and make sure that I'm around the right people so that I get encouragement and support. That's emotional and intellectual, those are spiritual. If I'm into that. And then, it's really the 8 dimensions of wellness, and you're not going to touch on every one of those every day, but my goal is to be able to touch on each one throughout the week so that I have a good set of things that I can look back on and say, okay, am I taking care of myself this week, or have I let that slip? Because I know when it slips, that's when I usually start to get a little manic or depressed, or things start to get wonky. And so it's just like, for me, I've kind of I've tried to make it something that I deal with every day, just like going to work, paying the bills, doing things around the house that have to be done every day. If I don't do that, then things get out of whack there because it's uneven. And so with my mental health, I try to do the same thing, So
do you rely on the people around you to say something if they see things starting to get out of whack? Or you've been in recovery a long time, or are you able to pick up on it?
I do rely on folks around me because I'm pretty good at picking up on the precursors, but at the same time, sometimes they slip by and I don't really notice them. And so I do rely on like my wife and my friends to be upfront and just say, are you okay? Because you don't seem quite right. Something's off, or to let me know so that I can reevaluate what's going on.
Yeah. 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 I think that for me, you hit on the first two for me, which is enough sleep. That's a big one for me. It's also one of those indicator ones. When I'm feeling okay, I'm sleeping okay.
Yeah.
But I can get into these. I can really, I can go weeks without sleeping well. And I remember one time I went like 2 months where
Wow.
I could not get my sleep regulated, and just very disruptive. And that has so many impacts on me because it makes me more depressed. And then my thinking isn't clear during the day.
Right.
And then I'm not motivated. I'm not, right. I'm not motivated to, right. And so that's a big one right away. And so I know that one, obviously, if I'm up half the night after night, I know, okay, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And right. That's a huge one, but I didn't always know that in my recovery. I went a long time, without actually identifying it that way, without really looking at that like, okay, you haven't slept well for a couple nights. What's going on? You got to work on that, and then developing. I mean, it probably took me 10 or 15 years to develop a sleep routine.
Right.
To not sleep, go to bed at all different times, and right. And my bedroom needs to be dark and quiet. I didn't know that. Nobody ever said anything to me. So it took me a long time to understand the importance of that, trying to sleep at the same time.
Yeah. I think that happens to everybody, is that as we're trying to figure out, what those needs are and how to regulate things. We all run across stuff that we're like, man, wish somebody would have told me that, or
Yeah,
how did that not happen?
exactly. I had a friend just recently said to me, this was like, so this is May, the beginning of May. So this was back, say, a month and a half ago, and said, well, you always have a depressive episode in the wintertime. I've been in recovery 30 years. No one's ever said that to me. I mean,
Yeah.
And I actually said, my response was, do I do that? Really? Like, it was like shocking. Now, I know it can get to me, the lot less daylight, more darkness, and then if the sleep thing, and not as much physical activity. And that's one of my tools is got to get out and get physical, physical activity. But for somebody to say that to me who observed that from the outside, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was a thing every single year. So even being in recovery for so many decades, I'm like, I'm still learning these things. I'm still learning, oh, yeah, this time of year, if I'm not taking care of myself, I can get into a deep, dark place, which just impacts everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you hit on it, I don't know that it matters how long we're in recovery. It's an ongoing process, and we're always learning. We're always evolving, and learning better ways to deal with managing things. And that's been my biggest challenge sometimes, is because I sometimes would get set in a routine, and then that routine doesn't always work. And so then I got to switch it up. Well, then if I don't catch that right off the bat, then I'm hoping somebody else does, and they can tell me, hey, you're not doing so hot, But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just an ongoing process that I think we all kind of go through, and hopefully with people around us, they can help us like that, because that's an amazing thing that, that they would tell you that.
Yeah, 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 to pick up on it. And it's what you said. It's about having the relationships around you with some good people who aren't afraid to tell you that.
Right.
Because I think there's so much stigma around mental health issues. And we can sit and talk about somebody who has a drinking problem, and we can say to them, hey, you have a drinking, like that seems to be much easier in society. But when there's mental health issues going on, there's this like reluctance to address it and say to somebody, hey, I'm seeing some things here. Are you doing okay? How can I support you?
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes it's a lack of education, right? Just because, with your example, like if somebody's got a drinking problem, we always say, well, there's AA and there's,
Right.
all these things that you could go and do and be a part of. But when it comes to mental health, we don't always say, hey, look, there's Montana's Peer Network. You can get in there and learn some things. You can get around some good people. You can learn more about yourself. There's, NAMI has a great connections group and a peer-to-peer group. And,
Right.
you can check all these things out, but not a lot of people know about those. And so
Right.
trying to spread that word and get them out there, I think helps with that, because then you do have to watch. And I think, that's one of the things that I try and talk about in building relationships, is that when you ask people into your circle to be supporters, you need to educate them as to what, this is what it's going to look like,
Right.
and this is what it looks like when I break down, and this is what I need you
Yeah.
to do. I don't want you to be afraid to ask questions. You really have to educate them, because if you don't, I've made that mistake, and because people always want to support you, but, and they'd be, oh yeah, that'd be great. Well, I made the mistake of not educating this person and not really getting into, this is what it's going to look like if I break down. Well, I had called everybody else and couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I called them and was suicidal at the time. And I said, here's the thing, and I just need some support. And, and they said, well, what do you want me to do about it? Like, what do I do? Because I don't know. So I had to kind of backstep there. But then after the whole incident, I lost them as a supporter and a friend for a couple of years until I could remake that up, because it wasn't that they were angry. It's just that they were more embarrassed that they just didn't know what to do. And then they were scared if I called them, we'd be back in the same situation. So yeah, it's really important to educate the folks around you,
Yeah. 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 They have to know they're on your list. They have to know that. And like you said, I think what's going to help in the situation, what can they do or say that's going to help in the situation? And again, I think like there's a lot of fear around, especially, you mentioned suicide and, crisis, people going into crisis, and there's just so much fear around it. Right. And it's like people, I think about it this way, like people are afraid it's gonna make them mentally unhealthy, or I feel like that's part of it. That's part of the hesitation, because like you mentioned, if somebody has a drinking problem, we say, well, there's AA, right? And that's for decades. I mean, almost 100 years we've been doing that. But in mental health, we're just starting to figure out, like, yeah, there's these other, you can go to other groups, there's peer support and there's counseling and medications, and there's like, and we're just maybe starting to learn how to say those things. And it's like something has really held us back. There's like this fear I feel like society has around mental health and not wanting to talk about it, because it's the same as your physical health or dental health or your eye health or whatever. Like we all need to go to the dentist and get checkups and take care of our teeth, right? And it's like I feel the same way with mental health. I mean, I just I went in for a tune-up during this last winter because I wasn't doing well. I went back to counseling, you know, and that's kind of how I've been doing it for the last 15 years is I go for a little while and then I don't go for maybe years. Like everything's all right and feels good. And but then things start happening and they're unraveling. So I go back in for a tune-up and go do some sessions and go work on some things. I think of it the same way as the dentist. I don't know if you view it that way, but I think of it the same way. Like I got to go in and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's like I said, again, it's for me, it's something that I try and do every day. And so when I see that things are getting wonky, then I got to change it up. I got to do something different. And if that is therapy,
yeah,
you know, that's therapy. If it's, you know,
yeah.
changing up the meds or whatever, but you
Mhm.
got to be able to be able to work with that and say, hey,
Mhm.
obviously something's not right. So I need to do something
Yeah.
else. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of fear around mental health because, you know, I don't know if people think it's contagious or if it's,
Yeah.
you know, just that fear of if I say the wrong thing, what's going to happen. And,
Mhm.
you know, and so the more we can educate people, the better off we are, you know.
Yeah. I I always feel like so speaking from the supporter side to other people, I always feel like if if I can help normalize the situation for somebody who's struggling, that's like one of my tools in my tool bag when I'm supporting somebody to try to just not that being in crisis is normal, but that it's not as extreme as we kind of make it out to be.
Right.
That lots of people in these times where they really are struggling mentally, emotionally, they're isolating, maybe they're having thoughts of suicide or self-harm but just to be, you know, I just had this not too long ago, you know, where somebody called and, you know, and they weren't doing well. They weren't in full-blown crisis yet, but they were right. And just normalizing the conversation and trying to stay away from that question of how you doing?
Right.
That
Yeah.
it's hard to answer that question when you're not doing well.
Right. It is because you don't know. Again, now on the other side, you don't really know what to say. You know, like, no,
Right?
today sucks. You know, it's terrible. You know, I don't know what to do with it. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's good to be honest about it, but at the same time, sometimes you're like, and some of us, you know, and I did this for a long time, was we mask a lot, you know.
Mhm. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
you're always, oh, everything's fine, it's all good,
Yes.
you
Oh,
know,
yes.
well, today was a little hard, but it'll be okay, you know. And
Yes.
yeah, and sometimes you just gotta say, I don't know, man, you know, I'm not doing great.
Yeah.
And to be honest about it, because the reality is that eventually the mask crumbles and then, you know, hopefully
Yeah.
before you hit crisis so that people can help, but you know,
Yes. I think I feel like I learned that when I was a child, when I was a kid, that I wasn't okay mentally and emotionally, right? But I didn't have all the words for that, right? I mean, I didn't
right,
know what recovery was, or so it comes out in running away from home. That's one of the ways it came out for me was literally like not going home after school, like running away, you know, like I'm going to go live on the streets. You know, I didn't have the I didn't have the words. So then it's like, oh, well, what's wrong? You know, oh, nothing. I just had a bad day at school. You know, you kind of learn that. I feel like that's when
right,
I learned it anyway, like when I was young. And then you carry it into your teenage years. And so you're in high school now, and I don't want to be uncool. I want to fit in with people. So now I'm doing it some more, right? And
right,
it was in high school when I first started, when I first got some language to describe. like thoughts of suicide. That it was in high school. And I had a situation where I disclosed it, and the people around me just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And they said, "Do you want to go to counseling?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to go to counseling. Like, my friends are going to make fun of me if I go to counseling."
Yeah.
Right. And so my parents sent me to the school counselor, and we sat there and talked about sports. Everybody knew, like, oh, Jim's going into the counselors, that, right? Like, and so I just wanted out of there, but I didn't have the language. And again, it's the masking, right? It's the covering
Yeah.
up of what you're really experiencing internally, because you don't have it. And I didn't have any tools in the toolbox yet,
Right.
right? So yeah, I mean, it wasn't until I got well into recovery, and I got into recovery early in my 20s, and it took me a long time to build enough tools where I could stay healthy.
Mhm.
I mean, probably like close to 10 years.
Yeah.
That's how long it really took me to, really feel like, okay. And that was and this is one of our other topics we want to talk about, was becoming a peer supporter when you have mental health challenges. So how did you come to the place of, I want to go help other people? How did that happen for you?
Well, really, when I was first diagnosed, my first thought was, damn, I really am crazy, but the reality is that it doesn't work that way. It took me 6 months of research to really I was trying to disprove the theory, and it really just settled in that, okay, so yeah, obviously this is what I'm dealing with. So I need to learn how to manage it,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's when I got around some people who were actually involved in MPN, and
Mm-hmm.
like Jennifer Falk and
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
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 So then that actually led first to becoming a rap facilitator,
Right.
because the peer supports weren't around yet.
Right.
They just weren't in our state yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, as I learned how to be a rap facilitator, I actually started working at the behavioral health unit, and so I was able to take that material and use it every day at work, and then on my own as well, because I have my own wellness and recovery action plan that my circle has. Everybody in my circle has a copy of that, so that they know how to get hold of each other at the very least. But that's what really started me on that path, and to be able to open up and share at work. I know sometimes they frown on that, but I had a really good boss, and we kept it within a boundary of, this is what I'm dealing with. And so, because people would ask, well, how do you know? You just work here, and it's like, oh, well, let me tell you how I know.
Right.
Because
Right.
because I deal with the same thing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where you and I first met, right? Am I remember? Yeah. You and I first met at the behavioral health unit.
Yeah. And then you were kind enough to set me into the rap stuff. And so that really helped. That really set that path. And so when the peer support opportunity came around, I really wanted to take that opportunity and really go after that in a fashion that technically we were already doing, but I just didn't know enough about what we were doing. And the peer support class really solidified a lot of good education for me personally that I was able to pass along, and still do. I mean, I work more on the life coaching side of things at this moment, but I still use all that stuff that I learned from the peer support that to help clients and to help other people that, I see are struggling that we keep in touch, and, got friends that from MPN and all the years at the BHU. And so,
Yeah.
we still keep in touch, and I still use all of that, and I wouldn't trade that for the world, really.
Yeah. 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 How do you like doing the life coaching? I don't want to say verse peer support, but like
Versus,
it's a little bit different, right? I mean, it's a
it is a
little
little bit
broader.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. How do you,
you have a little broader scale on.
yeah.
I like, in both of them, you have that aspect of being able to work with people one-on-one and in
Mhm.
real life. And I think that makes a big difference rather than, because it's
Mhm.
one thing to go to therapy, and that's great. But sometimes you need somebody to take your therapy goals to and say, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
you have a peer support or a life coach that's been there and can say, okay, well, let's break this down and we'll get it done, and then you
Yeah.
can show them how to do that. That really makes a big difference because, that's the thing that I can't say is I like one more than the other necessarily.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just where I fit in at the moment. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
but
I
I
mean,
think,
we know there's challenges in the peer support workforce. We,
yeah,
we know that there's all kinds of
there's a
challenges.
few,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and they're getting solved little by little. Hopefully we'll be able to do some
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we were talking about the peer support stuff, and one thing that somebody told me one time that I wrote down was our actions often reveal our priorities and not so much our intentions.
Yeah.
And so for me, I try to remember that every day. Like, how am I gonna touch? How am I going to enrich the people's lives that I touch today? How am
Yeah.
I, how's that going to look like?
Yes.
Because you really do. You have the opportunity to help people change their lives for the better,
Yes.
or the worse. I mean, but hopefully that's the goal. Is your character is to help people get better
Yes.
moving forward.
Yeah. 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 That was my motivation in getting involved with the work in the first place was, could I help? First, I had to get well, and I learned a really hard lesson when I first got into recovery with a friend. Our families were friends, and he was struggling with substance use. And I didn't even have a year in recovery, but things were starting to turn around for me. And instead of asking him what he wanted, me and the family, his family, got in and, did an intervention and got him into treatment. We talked him into recovery,
Yeah,
right? And, it was a disaster, it ended up a disaster. So that taught me this lesson. I got to get well first and understand before I try to help anybody. And for me, that didn't happen till when I hit about my 10 years in recovery. I started to say to myself, maybe I got something to share with people. But it would actually be another 4 years before I became a peer supporter. So I had 14 years in recovery. And I know it's a long time. I tell people that when I do the trainings, and they can't believe it because they're at like 2 years or 3 years, they're right.
right.
And I tell them like, look, I was sick. I was really unwell and I needed to build the tools and the confidence and all of that. And I think to do this work, I had to be ready mentally and emotionally. And then something started coming up in me that wanting to help other people not suffer the way I had.
Yeah.
And one of the times when I was hospitalized, I had a peer supporter who shared his experience with me, and it really changed the trajectory. That really is the moment I feel like I got into recovery, because for the first time, somebody was like talking to me on my level. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me, and all those years. And it's the same. I just finished a class last week, another class of peer supporters, and it's the same thing. You know, every morning when I get up for class, you know, and I'm getting ready, they're starting to come in the room. It's like I have an opportunity to help these individuals become great peer supporters, and they're going to each go out and help other people. And that's my motivation for doing it now, because I don't do as much direct peer support. I do some through the peer network people will call for support, but I'm not working in a service agency. But now I get to train people, right? So it's a different kind of role, but I have the same mindset as you of they're going to get my best today, so they can go out and be their best and support other people.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's you know, that's a huge thing, because the more supporters we have out there, the more education is going to be spread, whether it's one-to-one or in classes or, you know,
Groups, starting groups. Yeah. I had a woman who took the training last year. She just emailed me recently and said she started a women's support group in her town.
Nice.
Yeah, she's not working for an agency or any, you know, she just said, hey, I need some support. Maybe these other ladies need some support. Let's get a group going.
Yeah. And that's a great way to get things moving. I mean, you know, for a couple of years, Mike and I had a support group at the library here, you know, and then, and things, we kind of went another direction, but, yeah, it's amazing, you know, how those support groups help.
Yeah.
And even just your neighbors, right? Because she probably knows most of those women. So it's like,
exactly.
so I get my neighbors involved, you know, I'm sure they could use a little help.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's a great way for anybody out there that's listening, that's thinking about, you know, career as a peer supporter. That is kind of a great way to get into it slowly and not, you know, jump in and come to the big training and go get a job as a paid peer, you know, like there is a way to sort of ease into it and see if you truly do like doing that kind of work, if that really is for you. And then if you like it, of course, you can go on and make a career out of it and get involved with RAP and get certified as a peer supporter, or like you, become a life coach. But I really encourage people to think about that. How can they do something in their community to help themselves and help other people?
Yeah.
And it's
it makes
good.
a difference, you know?
Yeah, makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Especially if you're even just talking about it one-to-one with somebody. Like me, you know, I really went on to start the support group, and we have a few people come in, and even if it's just to sit and have that conversation about how's everybody's week, you know, what's going on today. Because that could be the saving grace in somebody's life, and you don't know.
Yeah. Yes, it absolutely can be. It absolutely can be. Yeah. So if you're listening out there, you're thinking about it, you know, and if you need help, reach out and ask us, and we'll give you some pointers on how to get it going. And because you really can make a difference, and we need champions in different communities doing that. Montana's got so many small towns and small communities. We need individual champions to step up and take that on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another great conversation with you, Todd. I mean, it's always good. You've always got good stuff, and
I appreciate that.
thank you. Yeah. Any final thoughts you want to say to anybody out there that might be listening? Mental Health Awareness Month, May.
One thought, I try to think of it as holistic health, right? Like it's all mind, body, and spirit. not just my mental health, but your physical health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, your well-being overall. How are you? And what do you need to do that? And the Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies book has some great help with that. I know they can get that from you guys.
Yep.
So I would
I
encourage
got the new. Yeah.
Just recognize as many, learn as you go and learn to recognize your own signs and what's going on with you so that you can keep track and educate the people around you. Those are huge.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. And this concludes another episode of Recovery Talks from Montana's Peer Network. Thanks, everybody.
There's always hope. Recovery is possible. Recovery works.
There is hope in recovery.
Healing takes time.
Recovery means resilience.
You can get through anything. Recovery works.
Recovery rocks!